Hey, my name is Key, and I'm going to be talking about finding a top tier Section 8 tenant. It's going to be very conversational. I'm not going to do like, first you have to do this, and second you have to do this. Like, there'll probably be timestamps in the down below, so you can look if you want to hop, but it's going to be very conversational. So the first thing I did was meet and leases. I'm located in DC. That's what they're called. It's held by the DCHA. There are in-person expo-like events where landlords will set up and they'll give you a sign that will say, I have 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and the landlords will sit on the outskirts of tables, and then the potential tenants, the prospective tenants, will literally walk around and just talk to different landlords. So I as you guys know, my units are 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So I had the 2 bedroom sign, and I went to 2 of them virtually, and then they switched in person. I went to maybe 3 in person, and I had an iPad with the photos of my unit. I also had printed out piece of paper that would have the specs of my unit. So it had like 750 square foot apartment. It had parking included, water included, and it had the rental amount. You can find the rental amount by going to affordablehousing.com. And then on the left-hand side, just click rent estimator and plug in your address, and it will give you a good idea of how much you should set your rent for. That number, I argue you 20% more. So whatever the number is, let's say it's 1,000, then list your unit for $1,200. I hope I did that math right. So you list it for $1,200. Or you don't have to list the rent. You can just say my rent is reasonable. And that pretty much means, and you'll see some tenants that will ask, is your rent reasonable? And what that means is, if you list a higher price or an astronomical price, when you are going through the DCHA application process, so it's RFTA, request for tenancy application. When you're going through the RFTA application process, if your rent is too high when you submit your application, they'll say, hey, we're going to give you this amount of money for your rent. Are you okay with it? They do give you the option to dispute it. I listed my unit for $2,350. They came back and said, you can only get $2,200, which I was fine with and utilities not included except for water. I was fine with it because I went into the affordablehousing.com, actually, and the rent amount that was shown, 20% more, actually comes down literally to $2,200. So I had that expectation. Now, I also had a sign-up sheet when I was at these meet and lease expos, and I would have various tenants sign up, leave their name, email address, phone number. And one question I would always ask tenant, and it is legal to ask tenants, do you have a permanent or a temporary voucher? And what that pretty much means, a permanent voucher would be a federal or a local voucher. That means pretty much they're going to keep receiving that money until the end of time, or until there's a change in circumstance. Versus a temporary voucher is something like a rapid rehousing voucher, which is the worst program that DC offers. It is literally the worst program, and I don't want to get into it. I had a rapid rehousing tenant. They actually lost their funding recently. So, which is unfortunate because they're going to kick a lot of families that need that off the program. But a lot of landlords are going to get screwed from that. So my rapid rehousing tenant I bought out. At the end of this video, I'll leave a link to my video on how to buy out a tenant. So the next step is showing your unit. In parallel, I ended up listing my unit online later because I just wasn't meeting. I'm not going to pick the first tenant that applied. Again, I wanted the top tier tenant, and they do exist. I have a mentor, Dr. Joe, who owns over 30 to 40 doors in DC, and all he uses is Section 8. There's nothing like that money hitting your account the first of every month. I mean, sometimes DCHA is late. I'm totally pro Section 8. So thereafter, after the event, I would send out a text to all of the tenants. I would personalize it and say, hi, so-and-so, my unit is available for viewing. Are you able to come this date, this date? I usually give 2 options, the same time period. I'm flexible on the weekends, but for weekdays, it's usually like 5 to 7. Maybe I'll do a lunch slot because I do have the benefit of working from home, so I can show them the property if it's during lunch. But you don't want to give like too much availability because sometimes a Section 8 tenant may drag their feet. They may not have an urgency to leave where they currently are. And if they do have an urgency to leave where they currently are, that's probably something that they will express to you during the meet and lease process, which is usually a red flag. Like if someone's like, I have to get out of my place now. Well, it's like, why? Right. So that I usually inquire a little bit more. I keep it very conversational. So that's what I was going to say. In parallel, you can also list out you list your property on Zillow, which I ended up doing later. I listed it on Zillow and affordable housing. Zillow was free. Affordable housing was not. I think I had to pay like $100 for $100 a month to list on affordable housing. But I actually got my tenant from affordable housing, which was interesting. The tenants that I kept getting from meet and lease, I had a lot of tenants who would come. Some tenants came and they were like, or sometimes before they came, they were like, you don't have a pool? You don't have a jacuzzi? Bruh. Oh no. You don't have a gym? Oh no. Oh no. And you know what? Shout out to those tenants. Like, again, if you're looking for the top tier type of tenants, they can go to top tier properties, and definitely not saying my property is not top tier. I believe it's top tier. Every renovation that I've gone through for my properties, I make it look like a place I would live in. Like, gone are the days where Section 8 is just your brown cabinets and carpeted floors. Like, those days are gone. And if you're a landlord and you're still renovating places like that, then you don't care to get top tier tenants. You just want to get someone in there, which is fine. That is totally fine if you're that type of landlord. I'm not mad at it. That's just not the type of landlord I am. I'm like a very meticulous landlord, and I want a really meticulous type of tenant. So I kept getting a lot of smokers. And the thing about a 4-unit, if you smoke in one unit, the smoke is going to go through the vents to other tenants. And that's just something that was a non-negotiable for me. I also was kind of a non-negotiable, but I was kind of sliding when I was getting worried that I wasn't going to get the type of tenant I wanted, was pet. I don't even like to hear dogs barking. So I just didn't want a tenant who had a dog. And my last tenant had a dog, and his dog chewed up baseboards, chewed up doors. It was just not, I just did not want to do a dog. And then he started dog breeding, like pit bulls. It was just a mess. Like, I'm just not pro dogs. So those are questions I asked up front during the meet and lease. And when I started interviewing tenants, I asked them, do you smoke? They were like, no, I don't smoke. And then come the next step, home visits. Now, home visits, I personally go to so after they apply, so this is after the application process, there were some people who didn't even make it past the application process because I saw blaring red issues. Like one prospective tenant she owed like thousands of dollars to like a credit union or something. And then when I asked her about it, she said she had no clue. She said it was fraud. She swore up and down it was fraud. She also was telling me that one of her child was like, has a tendency to bang his head on the floor and the walls. And I was just listening like, oh, no, that wasn't my face. My face was like, okay. But in my head, I was like, what the? Like, okay, this is red flag. So they didn't even make it past the home visit. So, okay, one person said they smoked. I went to their house. All you can smell was smoke. It was a couple. It was actually kind of like an elderly couple, which was, I felt bad that I didn't, but then they also had other issues too. The tenant ended up decided on, I went to her house. Her house was literally spotless. And it didn't even look, you could tell when someone cleans up because they have visitors, and you could tell when someone cleans up because they're actually clean people. So she had carpet in her current place, and there was no stains on the carpet. The kitchen was spotless. It was like, didn't smell smoke. She told me she wasn't a smoker, didn't smell smoke. So I felt really confident about her. And I asked, again, she found me on affordablehousing.com. So I guess that $100 was kind of worth it, and I didn't have to do the meet and lease. But so then after that, you go through the request RFTA package, request for tenancy approval. That is a long process. So when whatever date you have, the 5th is the most important date. You get the 5th of every month. If you put your application in before the 5th, then your tenant is not going to move in until the next month. So let's say you put your application in after October 5th. Then your tenant is not going to move in until December 1st. But if you put your application in before October 5th, your tenant could potentially move in November 1st. So just always be mindful of the 5th. The process is going to take anywhere from like a month and a half. Granted, that 5th of every month is like the deadline you want to aim for when submitting your RFTA application process. Again, I'm in DC. If it varies where you are, please leave it in the comments. But that's how I found my tenant. She moves in a couple of days, and I'm really excited. And hopefully I don't circle back with any horror stories like, I thought I had a top tier tenant, but she turned out to be a nightmare. I pray to God that you do not see. If you see that on my timeline then, or on YouTube, then disregard this video, because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. But if you don't, then all is well. All right. Okay. Bye.